The Obsolete Geek recently did an episode of his computer hunting series where he found the motherlode of Apple II systems, as well as a few other impressive pieces. He graciously donated one of the Apple IIcs that he acquired that day, and here it is. The thing appears to have had a hard life. The keys are pretty yucky, the case is all yellowed, there's sticky goo all over it in many places. Yeah, it's pretty gross. Now, technically it does work, but the video connector is very flaky as you can see here. In fact, the RCA connector is noticeably loose to the touch. So, I think it's time to take this piece of history and give it some special love. So, the first thing to do is see about getting all the gunk off the case using some alcohol. Some of this stuff takes a good bit of scrubbing to remove, and I kept finding more and more little places all over it that needed cleaning. I spent almost an hour just cleaning the surfaces on this thing. I used a toothbrush to get rid of the dirt out of the vent holes. Next, it was time to start disassembly of the unit. It turns out the IIc has a special little snap in the front that you have to find, and two more by the disk drive. Once you get those, the cover comes off pretty easily. Next, I removed the keyboard. This little metal box is the power supply, and it's held in by two screws. But then it removes almost like a ROM cartridge. Next, I unplugged the disk drive and removed it out of the system, exposing the entire logic board. While we're here, let's have a little tour of the board. So here's the CPU. It's essentially the same 6502 used in many computers from the 1980s. Here's a whopping 128K of RAM, which is actually quite a lot for an 8-bit computer. These are the UARTs for the serial ports. This is the character ROM. This is the video generator chip, ROM basic, and the I/O chips. Okay, so back to disassembly. I'll remove the last few screws holding the logic board in and then remove the board. This will make it a lot easier to work on the case. There's also a metal shield on the bottom that needs to come out. And the last thing to remove is this pesky beeper speaker. I had to pry it out. I did the final wash of the plastics in the sink, and then I dusted off the logic board with some compressed air. Okay, I wanted to get started on treating the case plastics first, so I laid out some plastic wrap on the bench and coated it with hydrogen peroxide solution. Then I wrapped up the case and sat it out in the sun to soak up some UV radiation. Shortly after, I followed up with the bottom case piece. While that was going on, I thought I would take a look at this video port problem. What a strange design. It appears that there's no physical connection on this port, and over time it becomes loose and just moves around. So, I coated the centerpiece with solder, and then I rotated it around so it was making contact with that pin on the motherboard, and then I heated it back up until it joined with it. And then I added some solder on the ground portion of the jack to keep it from moving around in the future. Next, I began working on the keyboard. I popped off all of the keys, and then I removed this rubber mat so that I could rinse it off. I noticed it was a tad brittle. Pieces kept falling off of it. Even when drying it off, more pieces kept coming off, and apparently picking it back up was the last straw, and it just disintegrated in my hands, so I just threw it in the garbage. I think the computer can live without it. So, back to the keys. I used a wet paper towel to clean off all the gunk from the keys, and for some reason the spacebar was much worse off than the rest of the keys, so I decided to treat it separately. I put it in a bag by itself and put it out to soak up some sun. I put all of the rest of the keys in their own bag and filled it with hydrogen peroxide. So, after several hours, it was time to remove the plastic wrap and rinse off the case pieces. You can see they look quite different now. Unfortunately, it appears I missed a few spots right on the very front. I also realized I forgot about the disk drive faceplate, so I began taking apart the disk drive so that I could remove the faceplate. Incidentally, I noticed that the disk drive uses a belt, and to my amazement, it's still working. Belts don't usually last this long. I put the faceplate in a Ziploc bag and filled it with hydrogen peroxide, and then I took the top case piece and covered it with foil to protect it from the sun since I didn't want to retreat the whole thing. Then I coated the front really well, and I took both pieces out in the sun for a couple of hours. The results are in, and the faceplate looks great, so I started reassembling the disk drive, and also the front case piece now looks great. So it was time to start reassembling the computer. Before I got too far, I wanted to test the logic board. Don't panic, this weird psychedelic pattern is normal. This is a test pattern that the IIc does when the keyboard is disconnected. So far so good. Next I had to put all the keys back on the keyboard so that I could test everything further. Let's try powering it up with the keyboard now. Yep, everything seems to be working. So all that was left was just to put everything else back together, such as the disk drive and then the top case. Take a look at this photo I took before and then after. Wow, let's try that again, before and now after. The computer is barely recognizable as the one we saw before. Now to put it through some tests by loading some games from floppy disk. First, I tried Maniac Mansion. That seemed to work, so I followed that up with some Spy vs. Spy. The video port is certainly working better now. So, I am very pleased with the outcome of this computer. I mean, this thing looks almost brand new. So yeah, and you know, this is my first Apple IIc. I've had several of the other Apple IIes, 2GS, whatnot, but I'm actually really impressed with the design of this machine, especially after I took it apart and saw how it goes together. And I think as far as the Apple 8-bit lines, I think this is actually my new favorite 8-bit from Apple. You know, it's so compact, and the disk drive's on the side, less cables and nonsense to worry about, and it's so small. So I think this will make a great addition to my museum. Now, many people have asked on my previous episodes if the peroxide treatment is a permanent fix for the plastic, or if it will revert back to being yellow again. I don't have a 100% definite answer on that. I can tell you anecdotally that I have performed this procedure on dozens of pieces of hardware over the years. 2 or 3 of them have returned yellow over a period of years. The rest of them have not. So I think a lot of it has to do with the plastic and what chemicals they use to make the plastic with. So it's really difficult to say whether it's going to return yellow or not. Another thing to point out is if you expose it to the same conditions that turn the original plastic yellow, well, of course it's going to turn yellow again. But I would say for the most part, if you apply the treatment and then you store it in a cool, dry place away from UV light, it should not, in most cases, return yellow again, but there is no guarantee. On a different note, I've got another video that I've been working on simultaneous with this, and it's very different from what I normally do on my channel, but it does give me an opportunity to do some outside shooting. So I look forward to presenting that to you in another week or two, and I'll see you next time.